When I was about 9 years old, female by the way, my family used to live in a remote area on the outskirts of town. Considering the location of the suburb, the area was surrounded by warehouses and such. At the time, my family did not have a phone in the house, and neither did our neighbors. There were no cell phones back then either, or they were at least a luxury that not everyone could afford. This took place at the end of the 90s. If I needed to call my mom for whatever reason while she was at work, I had to either go to my dad's work or to a company next to his which was closer and make a phone call. My dad's work was a relatively short walk from our house, probably about 30 minutes or less. At the time, my dad was working at a huge unloading dock for metallurgical and natural resource shipments. In order to get to my dad's work, I had to walk past another adjacent company just like the one my dad was working. I'll call it Docks 2. My dad's work, as well as Docks 2, had a sort of watchtower. It was really just a cabin mounted at the top of a tall platform, and you needed to go up a decent amount of stairs to get to the top. There was always a guard inside overseeing the whole yard from the top during the day and night, just to make sure no one is in danger and there were no break-ins. The phones were located only on-site watchtowers at the time. Docks 2 were much closer to our house, about a 10-minute walk away. One day, as I've done many times before, I went to the Docks 2 to make a call. I climbed the stairs and knocked on the door, and was welcomed by a guard I used to see quite often and knew very well. However, that day he was not alone. A new guy, 28 I think, was there. Apparently he was a new employee hired to work shifts. He was this very tanned white guy, always wearing military-style outfits. I was just an average-looking child, looking pretty much exactly my age. My hair was very blonde, which made my cheeks always appear rosy red, and gave me an even more childish appearance. Well, when the new guy saw me that day, he just could not take his eyes off me. As soon as I was about to finish my call with my mom, it's just one room so everyone could hear my conversation with her, the new guy went outside to smoke. When I came out too, he smiled at me and asked me what my name is and whether I came here often to make calls. I don't remember what I said, but I felt very shy because he was staring so deeply into my eyes. I'll just call him the creep. Fast forward a bit and I came to that tower to make a call again. There he was. But this time he was alone. I spoke to my mom and was about to leave when he asked me if I wanted any tea, to which I refused. He then proceeded to ask how my school was going, things like that. He offered to help me with my homework as well. However, I told him I had it all sorted. It was harmless but quite strange. On a side note, I just want to say that he gave me shivers when I was near him. Whenever he looked at me, he looked drunk, which was very unsettling. Mind you, he wasn't actually drunk, but his eyes would just get so hazy, and his face would flush bright red. Sometime later, I saw him again. This time I was walking to my dad's work with my friend, and he was doing some digging in Docks 2. When he saw me through the metal fence that was separating us, he leaned against his shovel and just stared at me. He didn't say hi or anything like that. After those encounters for quite some time, I took alternative routes to see my dad or play with my puppies at my dad's work, or make calls to my mom, because this guy just really freaked me out. One day though, I had to call my mom urgently. My dad's work phone didn't work, so I had to go to the Docks 2 tower, just hoping I wouldn't see him there. Well, of course he was, and oh boy was he so happy I came. He was complaining how I don't come to see him anymore. As I was making a call, he grabbed another chair and sat right next to me very close. It took a while for the call, because my mom was busy with something, and someone went to get her whilst I was on the line. It felt like hours waiting, and this creep was just sitting next to me looking at me and smiling. When my mom finally got to the phone, he got up and went to make me tea and brought some biscuits. When I was done talking, he insisted I have some. I didn't though. He just kept on trying to strike up a conversation, but this time the tone was different. He asked me how old I was exactly. I told him 12 or 13. I have no idea why I lied that I was older than 9. He told me his age, and although I knew he was much older, I felt really weirded out that he wanted to talk to me so badly or had any interest in being my friend. My alarms did go off when I was around him, but I guess I just didn't feel overtly in danger. When he proceeded to tell me that I was beautiful and asked me if I had a boyfriend, he asked me if I already dated boys and what type of boys I liked. I just became so uncomfortable and eager to leave at that point. He would just keep trying to drag me into these weird conversations. I could tell he had been drinking that day. When I began to move toward the door, he motioned to follow me. Eventually, we were both outside. However, in order to get down from the tower, you need to walk this narrow path toward the stairs. He stood there blocking it so that I couldn't leave. He got very close to me, and I freaked out. The only escape tactic I could come up with as a child was to pretend I was seeing someone from the top of the tower, began waving my hand at the road down the bottom and towards the houses in the distance. I pretended I saw someone I knew, saying, "Oh look, that's my uncle. He's waving at me." The creep looked in that direction, but either didn't care or could tell I was lying. I kept telling him that the uncle who waved back was a big angry man, and if I didn't come down this instance and go home, we were both going to be in a world of trouble. The creep didn't budge though. He got even closer and pressed me against the railing. He kept on asking me his weird questions while I was terrified to move because I didn't want to move my body against his, if that makes any sense. I just froze there. He asked me if I would come on a date with him and that he was looking for a girlfriend. At that particular moment though, someone was coming up the stairs to the tower, so he let me go but asked me to come back. I had not told anyone about this encounter at this stage because I was afraid my parents would get angry at me. I also felt very embarrassed and thought people would judge me for what happened. Sometime later, I was at home and it was around 9. I know the time because it was my bedtime. Suddenly, out the window, I could see a car come into our driveway. I went to see who it was through the front room window. I could see it was the creep, but this time he had brought other guys with him, blasting music in his car and shouting my name. I have no idea how he learned where I lived. He must have followed me home one day. My dad was outraged. He asked me who these people were, but before I could even answer, he rushed outside. Apparently, the creep asked for me to go out with him and his friends. My dad obviously refused, saying I was a child and too young to hang out with them or go out at this time of night. He said that if he ever saw any of them again, he would beat the living day out of them. So, they drove away. I was so upset with my dad that he called me a child in front of them. It was such a stupid thing to get mad about. I think because we lived so far away from everything, I was really keen to make friends as there were no kids around and such. For a while after that, I hadn't seen the creep or heard of him. A significant time later, I was walking to my dad's work again. I had completely forgotten about the creep. He was working in the docks too with his friends. I got scared when I saw him, and even though he shouted hi, I pretended not to know him. He said something to his friends, and I remember so clearly how one of his friends exclaimed loudly, "Her?" I looked at the guy that exclaimed. He was staring at me in utter disbelief. He must have been about 20 or 25, I think. The creep was saying something to him. The friend suddenly screamed at him, "Have you lost your mind?" Clearly, the creep didn't see me as a child like everyone else did. Fast forward again, maybe half a year later. One day I was home alone in the evening waiting for my parents to come back from work. We lived in a very safe community, so sometimes I'd be home by myself for a little bit, after school until my parents got home. I was playing a game whereby I was a singer. I had just cleared this stage in the living room, and I was performing in front of chairs pretending they were a live audience. It was pitch black outside. At some point during my performance, I turned to see someone staring at me through the living room window. That person must have been crouching down, as only the top of his face could be seen from the bottom. As soon as the person realized I'd seen them, they ran away. I was so embarrassed that someone saw me performing, scared and shocked at the same time. It was like I literally got glued to the floor. I don't know for sure whether that was him. Our dog didn't react at all, maybe because the music was playing very loud. I was scared to go outside the house to check, but peered through the window. When I did though, no one was there. That person had to climb over a wooden fence to get to our living room window. I told my parents about it. I've also asked my friend whether it was him who came around, but he said it wasn't. I don't know whether it was truly the creep. To finish this up, One day I went to the docks too with my dad, as my dad needed something from there for work. I saw the old guard I knew well and asked about the creep. I was told he didn't work there anymore. I don't know what happened to him. I never told my parents about that though. My brother and I worked across the street from a mini storage place, and roughly 2 years ago, we noticed they had an auction sign out front. We decided we wanted to check it out, so we walked over, hoping to find something interesting. If you haven't watched Storage Wars, the way these work is that the auctioneer opens up the unit, and you're not allowed to enter or touch anything. You only have a window of about 15 seconds to look around and decide if you want to bid. This unit was small, 4 feet by 4 feet, and my brother and I noticed a group of 5 fishing poles amongst other boxes and bags. We had been talking about buying a few poles, and this seemed like a good opportunity, so we yelled out a low bid and surprisingly won. As per the auction rules, we had until the end of the day to empty out the unit. Being a small one, this was a 2 garbage can job. We got out a can and started sorting. It started out promising, finding a nice microscope, a few tools, standard storage stuff. I pulled out a plastic garbage bag and opened it, only to find another tied shut garbage bag inside. I opened that to find another garbage bag. Since nothing terrifying is ever kept in triple tied bags, I foolishly opened it, only to find the dried, mummified remains of a very old cat. My brother and I just stopped and stared at each other. And since neither of us needed a dried-out dead cat at the moment, we weren't sure how to handle this specific piece of storage unit treasure. We did what we always do when faced with something this out of context. We laughed uncomfortably until we looked back into the unit and noticed 2 more sets of tied garbage bags. At the end of the day, we found 3 bags with parts of or entire cats. We also aren't doctors, but we're pretty sure there were some dog bits in there as well. Granted, saying it was a storage unit full of dead cats would be an exaggeration, but considering a normal storage unit generally has 0 dead cats, I think a small unit with 3 or 4 could be considered full. As if the multiple bags of dead cats wasn't bad enough, the creepiest part of the whole thing was finding his or her creepy drawings of the cats. A used pink cat food and water bowl too. I spoke with a manager of the storage facility and explained my findings and asked who owned that unit. Obviously, they couldn't give me the name, but when I asked if they were perhaps a vet or something, the owner laughed and said, "Definitely not." He also said that helped to explain why the person's other abandoned unit that had gone up for auction prior had been full of empty cat carriers. Okay, so this happened in 2016 when I was a 17-year-old first-year college student in film school. I'm now 22, and my name is Julia. I lived alone in my first ever apartment. It was really small, but I was really proud of my independence. I never felt unsafe in this apartment for several reasons. First, there were multiple gates in the residence that needed to be opened through a code, which only the people who lived there knew. My door had 3 different locks, and it was right next to the university, so most people who lived in the neighborhood were college students. Nothing bad had ever happened in that neighborhood before as far as I'm aware. I've always been very careful with locking the door when I leave my home. I always check twice, since I have slight OCD. So this one time, I leave to go to class and lock my door, but for some reason I could not get the key out of the lock. It was completely stuck, so I went to the caretaker of the building to help me. He wasn't there and I was getting late for class, so I went to class with the key still in the lock. I took off the keychain first though, so it was not too noticeable. When I got home, the caretaker was back, so he came to help me. We couldn't get it out for 15 minutes, until somehow he did. He told me the lock was damaged, but that I didn't necessarily need to change it if I only locked it once instead of twice. I just said okay, and that was the end of it. I wasn't really worried because of how safe I felt in this building. Flash forward to 2 months later. I was taking out the trash one night around 11 p.m. while on the phone with my sister. I remember telling her that I was doing this, then that I would take a shower afterwards before heading to a party. As I previously said, I always lock the door, even just to take out the trash. Because of my lock being damaged though, I only locked it once. When I got back to my apartment, I found the door unlocked, which immediately alarmed me. I went into the apartment and locked the door immediately, all 3 different types of locks. When you walk into my apartment, which is just 215 square feet, you have the main room in front of you and the bathroom door immediately to your left. Enough so I could see a man in my shower, turning his back to me. Naturally, when I saw this, I tried to open the door and leave as fast as possible, except my main lock was damaged from 2 months earlier, and I couldn't get it open no matter how hard I tried. In this moment, all I could think was that I had to leave this situation as fast as possible. I jumped out of the window without really thinking. I figured it was the only solution, except I lived on the 2nd floor, so I completely smashed my ankles in the landing. I started running whichever way I could. When I got a bit further from the building, I looked back. I could see a man was there at my window, watching me run away. I thought of 2 possible outcomes. Either the man was going to jump and chase me, except I wouldn't be able to get far with my twisted ankles, or he would get scared of the height and be locked in my apartment. Thankfully, he picked option 2. I went to hide in a bush a little further and called the police, who arrived just 10 minutes later because I lived close to the station. They kicked my door open, and the man was there just sitting on the couch holding a knife, waiting for me to come back, like he didn't think I would call the police. They arrested the guy and later told me he had already been arrested for sexual assault, rape, attempted kidnapping, and attempted murder. They also told me how everything had happened. Like I said, it was a very friendly neighborhood with mostly college students, so he got inside the building by other people holding the door open for him. He then heard me telling my sister I was going to take a shower, which is why he was waiting in the bathroom for me. He crocheted my lock while I was taking out the trash. He had apparently noticed me on school campus and followed me to my home several times before succeeding in actually coming in. He stayed inside waiting for me because I had recently changed my phone and the previous one was still on the table, so he thought I didn't have a phone to call police. I don't live there anymore, but after that, to get in the building, we all needed identification proving we lived there. Building IDs were created. We had to scan them every time. It was the only way to go inside. Nothing bad happened in the neighborhood after that change, and it's back to being a very peaceful and friendly neighborhood. I live in a small town. It's a very blink and you'll miss it sort of thing. The best we can boast about really is a single stop sign and a gas station, which we only have because of a nearby highway. Any actual semblance of a town is 25 minutes away. So when things get scary out here, it's very amplified. The occasional homeless person is no big deal. They're often just drifting through. Drug addicts run rampant as well and will steal everything they can from your house, but it's the norm out here. However, what happened a few years ago, that certainly was not normal. Originally, I was dead asleep in my bed. I only woke up because it was burning hot in my room, but it was summertime and there wasn't much I could do. I just remember tossing and turning until I got this creepy feeling that fell into the pit of my stomach. I glanced over to the bathroom door that was open with the light on. Everything was normal. I left the light on so I wouldn't trip and die if I had to pee in the middle of the night. Next, though, I glanced at the window directly across from my bed. It had no curtains, but it did have a shitty set of blinds on it. Part of the blinds are broken from wear and tear, and the crappy AC output beneath it would make them move back and forth, so you could get a glimpse of the outside every so often. The yard light was still going, but what made me stop was the outline at my window. A figure of someone was directly at my window, almost like it was waiting for the blinds to move and watch me. I didn't have an active imagination as a child. That had been trained out of me, but the sight was enough to pour every horror film into my head at that moment. I squeezed my eyes shut and pulled my blankets over my head. I slept in a cloth oven that night. By morning time, the figure was already gone. I remember running to my mom's room on the verge of tears in the morning, telling her what had just happened. She laughed at me like I was a stupid idiot and told me it was probably just a stray cat that had climbed up there for one odd reason or another. I almost believed her, since my window was pretty high off the ground, but something just didn't sit right with me. Later that day when we were doing yard work, I glanced over at my window and saw one of our metal patio chairs had been pushed up right against it. I pointed it out to my mom, who proceeded to chew me out. "That's how the cat probably got up there, you moron. Stop leaving furniture everywhere." But I hadn't moved it. It was heavy enough that I struggled to even lift it. We moved it back, and so began a pattern. At night, I'd see this figure, complain to my mom, and we'd find the chair moved back every single morning. This went on for a few weeks. My mother stopped caring about my concerns until one morning we saw where the outside screen of my window had been sliced open. I still remember her shaking her head and complaining about those damn stray cats that we still had yet to see. I could tell she was unnerved by that development though. I couldn't handle it anymore. I opted to sleep in our living room that night. The only problem was, our kitchen and living room connected, which meant there were always several windows. The first night of my move went well despite my back hurting from the couch. I avoided my room like the plague. It wasn't until about 4 days later we first ran into an issue. I woke up and glanced at the clock above the fireplace. It read a little bit past 3 a.m. I didn't realize right away why I'd woken up until it happened again. There was a beam of light shining in from the kitchen window, almost like someone was shining a flashlight in. I saw it trace along the walls and land on the love seat across from the couch I was on. I was mortified. When I told my mom, she just continued to laugh at me. I gave in and decided I would sleep in my dad's room, even though it had a gigantic window. He slept in the recliner with a huge TV, so it felt safe having someone around. The yard light was directly outside the window. Anyways, it seemed foolproof. That was until I woke up out of habitual fear and watched through the window across from my bed. Everything seemed normal as time drug on, and I felt like I was a moron. Maybe my mom really was right. That was until I saw a lone figure come out of the woods by the backyard shed, walk directly under the light, and head to the patio furniture like he'd been there plenty of times before. I still remember the large build the man had and the confidence, like he was the one who lived here and wasn't the one creeping around my yard in the dead of night. I just remember listening to the TV until I fell asleep again, hoping to get another glimpse. My dad would have been pissed if I had woken him up. He was grumpy on a good day and terrifying on a bad day. I didn't feel like risking it unless I had solid proof, because I was scared. The next morning, my mom chewed me out again for the patio furniture, which was routine almost a month later. But this time, something new happened. She demanded I stop playing with the toolboxes of the garage. A bunch of tools had been taken out and left on our doorstep. Screwdrivers, a large hammer, flashlights. It wasn't me. I begged with my mom and pleaded with her, just stay up with me one night. We couldn't close our garage because it was an open carport, and I wasn't going to get my ass beaten for touching tools because of someone else. It was driving me mad. Finally, she agreed. That night, we would stay awake in the living room. I fell asleep before my mom did. I remember her waking me up in a complete panic. She pointed to the window that overlooked our garage. We could see the top of someone's head as they walked back and forth. There was the sound of someone placing metal tools down on the brick steps, as if they were trying to be quiet but couldn't fully muffle it. She whispered for me to go wake my dad. My dad was angry, having been woken up in the middle of the night by his frantic daughter. He grabbed his pistol and headed out the back door, towards the front of the house where the garage was located. We heard my dad screaming, and someone dropping tools, then the shot of a gun twice. The frantic footsteps pounding out of the garage felt like they were coming from my chest. My mom peeked out the window, then opened the door, and my dad stumbled in. He had missed both shots because of his unstable aim, but told us there was a man crouching at our front door, looking at our door handle. Needless to say, none of us slept that night, and in the morning the law from the closest town arrived. They didn't do much beside ask if anything had been stolen, ask for a description of the man, and then tell us to install cameras. That was it. They said the guy was probably just looking for something easy to steal for quick money. If that had been the case though, why hadn't he stolen the tools, the generator, or the welder, or broken into any of the vehicles just sitting there in the garage? We finally set up hunting trail cameras around the house, but nothing happened since then. Coming home from college for holidays, I still have nightmares about the incident years later when I sleep in my own bed. I don't know what he was looking for, or why he did those things he did. Whatever the case may be though, man at the window, let's not meet. What is up guys, Blue Spooky here as always. Thank you guys so much for watching, especially if you made it this far to the end of the video. I don't know if you guys could tell the difference, but I got a new mic in the XLR stuff and got all of my room sound treated, so hopefully it sounds a little bit better than normal. Let me know how it sounds to you guys. If you guys enjoyed the video, please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share if you feel so inclined. If you have any thoughts about the stories in this video or any feedback on what I can do to improve the videos on my channel, please be sure to leave a comment below. I always love to read through them and see what you guys think of the stories and all that, so please be sure to share your thoughts. If you guys have any stories that you would like to share yourself, or any stories you'd like to suggest that I read, please take a look in the description below the video. You can find links to my social media, including my Facebook, Twitter, and Gmail accounts. Send me a message on any of those, and I will try to read your message as soon as possible. If you do decide to send in a story, please be sure to include in the tagline of the story what the name of the story is if it has one, the type of story if it has one, and how you would like to be credited in the description of the video the story appears in. Last but not least, I do have two other channels, Darkest Hour, where I do dark documentaries once per month, and Mr. Blue Skies, where I do at least one true crime documentary a week. If you guys are interested in that kind of content, why not take a look at those and check them out? Maybe they'll be for you. Anyways though guys, I think that's all for now, so thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you guys have a great day.